Hey everyone, so I do have a very important announcement before I begin today's video. Sourcing content for this channel is getting harder and harder to do. What I mean by that is, stories are pretty hard to find. I've always had an email for submitting stories, but I understand that's not a lot of people's cup of tea, so to speak. I have opened up a subreddit where you guys can share your stories to be narrated on the channel easier. You can also read other people's submissions and get the inside scoop on stories to come. I'm really hoping to see this do well. So if this is something you're interested in, it is reddit.com/r/slumberreads. You can also find it in the description as the top link. The goal is for this channel to someday thrive off of the subreddit alone. With all that being said, I'd like to give a huge thank you to all of tonight's writers. Be sure to drop a like if you enjoy. Subscribing if you're new is also very much appreciated. Enjoy the video, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. Tragedy is an odd thing. Everyone handles it differently. People love to say, if this happened, I'd do this, I'd do that, etc. But I can guarantee that unless someone has been through tragedy, they don't know. Not truly. So when my best friend, Ricky, passed away from a mugging gone south, despite always being a go-getter who liked to believe I could get through anything, I found myself in my room moping every day away. The culprit has yet to be caught, which only makes things worse. Ricky deserved better than getting stabbed in the alley behind our complex. He had a promising future in computer tech, and would never bring harm to anyone in his path. February 8th is a date forever etched into my mind. Sure, there'd come a day where I'd have to leave the apartment we shared, but I wasn't ready for that yet. We were best friends basically since we could walk. He was always a smart guy. I could ask him for advice on anything, and he'd have the words. I had no clue how I'd carry on knowing I no longer had him around. I know that sounds selfish. I was lucky to have a comfortable job that allowed me a 2-week paid leave to regain my bearings. I'm 20, by the way. Outside of work and home, I really didn't have much going on in my life. All of this is to say that my world crashed when all of this unfolded. Now, on to why I'm writing this. The first week after his passing, I didn't notice much. With the recent events, I now realize how much I overlooked as a tired imagination. It started with the scratching on the walls. We lived in an apartment. Again, this wouldn't be strange or uncommon. What made it strange was the fact that the scratching mostly came from the wall between mine and Ricky's rooms. I'll give a brief layout of the apartment for the sake of its importance. It was a 2nd-story apartment in a 5-story building. It was on the far end of the hall with 8 other apartments on the floor. This meant it was a corner apartment. Upon entering, you'd be in the living room, which was joined by the kitchen to the left and an open floor plan. On the side of the kitchen was a hallway with a bathroom to the left and our rooms to the right. Mine first, his second. Laundry was shared by everyone on the floor in a room all the way on the other side of the building. Simple enough, right? The scratching couldn't come from another apartment because my room didn't border any. This alone wouldn't raise any suspicion in me. I'd have to be crazy to assume it was a ghost or anything of that nature. Figuring it was either my imagination or the heater, I didn't think much of it. Each night for that first week, the scratching became more constant. By that 7th night, it took everything I had in me to fall asleep. I'm sure you all know how much harder trying to fall asleep makes falling asleep. This is where things took a major turn. I woke up, or at least I thought I did. I couldn't move my body, but my eyes were wide open. It felt like the room was shaking and the sound of static filled my ears. At this moment, I didn't know what I was experiencing. Trying to break free, my gaze shifted to my right. What I saw shook me to my very core. There was a creature. It was completely fizzed out, like a humanoid made out of static. The sound I was hearing seemed to be radiating from this being. The thing was scratching something into the wall. There were words everywhere. I didn't have much time to analyze, but there were words like trapped, help, where, and so much more. It littered the wall. It seemed he was writing a main phrase in a giant open spot in the middle. I was trapped while he etched the word not into the wall. Then I snapped out of it. Panic flooded me and I leapt out of bed to find the sun already beaming through my window. The night was over, and with the idea of falling back asleep out of question, I made some breakfast and dusted off my old laptop to do some research. Surely there was a logical explanation for all of this. Of course there was. It didn't take long to come across a Wikipedia page for sleep paralysis. From what I gathered, it is exactly what I experienced and is commonly brought on by high levels of stress. Okay, I'm not crazy. The heater is causing the scratching noise, and my sleep paralysis episode was just my brain forming these events into a nightmare. Out of sight, out of mind. I had my answer, and that was good enough. I closed the laptop, and with the plan of doing anything to keep my mind off things, I watched Netflix the whole day, mostly comedies and things of the like. I'm usually a horror fan, but I felt that wouldn't be the best idea. I laid down around 10 p.m. and sleep took me rather quickly. Once again, I was brought into sleep paralysis. Same scenario, same everything. The humanoid was writing on the wall, and I watched as he wrote the word, "what," to follow up his previous message of "not." Despite my terror, I tried to read more of what was on the wall. Words like Ricky, damned, astral, and various other words are what I recall. I snapped out of it once the creature finished his new edition. I awoke and flipped out of bed from the resistance I was trying to gain from staring any longer. Same thing as yesterday. 7 a.m., sun shining. Everything was so similar it felt like Groundhog Day or something. Great. 2 nights in a row. I'm already dealing with enough and my mind picks now to come unhinged. They say when it rains, it pours. The saying couldn't be any more true. I didn't want to entertain the insanity I was clearly delving into. But what else did I have to eat my day away? I grabbed out my laptop once more. Astral was the word I didn't recognize. A simple Google search told me some interesting information. Astral is, and I quote, relating to a supposed non-physical realm of existence, to which various psychic and paranormal phenomena are ascribed, and in which the physical human body is said to have a counterpart. This was something. How is it that a word I had never heard of fits so closely with the description of my experience? Maybe I could have heard the word before, and this was all my mind playing some crazy tricks from my subconscious, but this was crazy. Also, what does it mean by counterpart? I dug deeper. I read up on the astral realm for the whole day, how to gain access. I left no stones unturned. I was drawn in. Sleep paralysis is said to be a gateway to this realm. If I could stay calm and try to separate my soul from my physical being, I might be able to get answers from this demon. It had to be a demon. This was all making too much sense in my crazed mind. The gears were turning. Up until this point, I wasn't sure if this creature had ill intent. Maybe it was trying to warn me. A strong maybe, but with how my life is going right now, it was a risk I was willing to take. I went to bed at 10 p.m. again. It didn't take long to be in sleep paralysis with the same scenario playing out for the third time. It was etching a line going straight down when my vision gained focus. I remembered the steps. Calmed myself. Tried lifting myself from my center. It seemed to be working. Until I heard a noise. It was like the demon was surprised. It let out a shriek. High-pitched. Almost like it was excited. This made me lose focus and brought me back to square one. It continued writing and made the word "it," and I woke to, well, you get it now. Damn it. I was so close. Once the adrenaline wore off, it hit me like a ton of bricks. This was for real. Something was happening here, and I wasn't crazy. Is it wrong to say I felt some relief? This was going to take some critical thinking. What if I fell asleep on the couch and attempted astral projection from there? This time I laid down and fell asleep around 9 p.m. I woke once again in sleep paralysis. Scanning my surroundings, the demon wasn't present, and neither was the static. I used the tactics I had read about and had nearly no problem exiting my body. This was unreal, almost like it was meant to happen. I crept towards my room. Standing outside the door, I heard frantic scratching. I knew what was on the other side. I went to open the door, but my hand went right through. I walked through it. The demon turned towards me and put his arms up. Imagine making the C in YMCA. He wanted me to read the wall. The last word was seems. Not what it seems. I read out loud. Nothing is. The demon spoke. This wasn't something I expected. What does this mean? I asked. It means exactly what it reads. Nothing is what it seems. Your world is shaped by things most will never see, the demon said. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wondered if this was all a nightmare. Surely a demon would never present itself to me like this. The demon spoke again. You have a choice. I've been assigned to you. If I die, I return to hell and later get assigned to someone else. Your negative energy has fed me sufficiently. But my kind ache for more. You can kill me, and I will leave. If you don't, I will haunt you forever. But understand, if you let me stay, I can work miracles. I will grant you one miracle of my choosing. We could be a team, but this decision is yours. Just remember, it is not what it seems." "What do you mean by haunt me?" I asked. "No fun in ruining the surprise. All you have to do is place your hand in my chest and pull out my heart, and I will be gone," he said. I inched closer to him. "What will happen?" I asked, but he was done speaking. I didn't want to be haunted for life by this thing. Who knows how he'd torture me? I placed my hand in his chest. The grin on his face widened. I gripped the only solid mass I could find and pulled. I awoke to police sirens. Glancing out my window, I realized they were coming from the back alley. I ran outside to see what was going on. Ricky's body was surrounded by detectives. "Date of death, 7 a.m. February 8th. One of them spoke. This couldn't be happening. Did I travel back in time? I pulled out my phone and confirmed. It was February 8th. I cried the same way I did nearly 2 weeks ago, spoke to the officers on scene, and went back to my apartment after the countless questions. You see, I believe we all have demons, and if you kill yours, you'll have to live with yourself. Ricky was always a good friend. So close that an entity would use him to get to me. The demon had to have assumed I'd take his offer of a miracle. I didn't, and now my best friend is still dead. The deal the demon presented was rotten from the beginning. Not what it seems. Demons are tricky. He found a way into my head and played his games. There are many things I still don't understand, but the one that eats at me every night is... who won? Did I fall right into his hands? Perhaps when I destroyed the demon I took something physical with it. What makes me think that, you ask? What would you think if you found a bloody knife in your kitchen sink? I've always liked being outside. As a child, I'd rather be outside than in, no matter what the weather. Sun, rain, snow, wind, none of it fazed me. The older I got, the braver I'd become. I'd venture out into the forest in the middle of a storm. I'd swim against the waves on a windy day, or I'd go for long walks in the blazing sun. I liked the challenge of survival. School never seemed that important to me. Why bother staying inside when I could be outside? I felt like I learned more from nature than school could ever teach me. It wasn't surprising for my family when I opted out of college to travel the world. The most remote locations seemed to beckon me. I've slept in the rainforest, dived deep in the ocean, climbed countless mountains, and tried to take any opportunity offered to me. Unfortunately, my life of adventure seems like it's drawing to a close. I always thought when I died it would be somewhere incredible, like Mount Everest or Mariana's Trench. I never believed it would be in the boring old forests in Ontario, Canada. It was supposed to be a simple camping trip with a few of my oldest friends. I don't come home often, and when I do, it's a good opportunity for a few tame nights of camping in the forest I grew up in. This time should have been the same. I'll start at the beginning, because reminiscing about my life isn't going to help me. Nothing can help me now. Myself and 3 of my friends from high school had a 3-night camping trip planned. It started out fine. We hiked deep into the woods and set up our camp in a small clearing. We had been camping together before, so we all fell into the usual routine of setting up. I would make a fire, Dennis would set up the tent, Sarah would help Dennis, and Alan would take pictures and videos of the rest of us working. We stayed up late the first night, drinking as we caught up on each other's lives. Dennis and Sarah had finally set a wedding date. I told tales of my latest adventure in Mongolia, and Alan talked about his latest hobby, rebuilding some old car engine. The stories became more exaggerated, and the laughter around the fire louder as the evening wore on. The next thing I knew, I awoke in my tent. The harsh sun made it uncomfortably hot, and I sat up, pushing sweaty hair from my face. I swallowed. My mouth felt like it was full of sand, and groaned in response to my throbbing head. I must have drank way too much, because I couldn't remember leaving the fire last night. I dragged myself out of the tent, relieved that the fresh air was cooler outside, and breathed deeply. Our little campsite was silent. which meant everyone else would still be sleeping. Whoever woke up first usually made coffee, so I shook my aching head and decided to get started. That's when I first noticed something strange. It was quiet, but not the normal quiet you have in the forest. There was no natural sounds, no birds, no breeze, no small animals scurrying around. I looked around, beginning to feel a trickle of unease run through my body. The bottle of vodka we had overindulged in last evening was shattered beside the campfire. But other than that, things appeared fairly normal. Well, not quite. My tired eyes found Alan's tent, and it was open. "Al?" I called, my voice sounding harsh in the silence. There was no answer, and that didn't necessarily mean something sinister was happening. He could easily have not heard me, or he could have wandered off to have some privacy. "Al?" I called again, a little louder. Walking towards his tent, I heard somebody stir in Dennis and Sarah's tent, and carefully pulled back the flap of Alan's tent. It was empty, and his sleeping bag looked undisturbed, as if it hadn't even been used. That was strange. Alan never made up his bed. "What are you doing?" I heard Sarah behind me, and I straightened as I turned. "Al isn't here," I said, feeling concerned. "I just woke up. His tent was open, but..." I trailed off, opening my hand slightly and shrugging. Sarah yawned, looking as awful as I felt. "He's probably off in the bush to, Dennis can go look." I nodded, watching Dennis climb up from their tent, stretching and groaning. He didn't look good either. "What time is it?" he asked. I dug around my big sweater pocket for my phone, pulling it out. "Whoa, it's 4 in the afternoon." "What?" Sarah snatched my phone. "How is that possible?" "When did we go to bed?" I asked, looking between them. I don't know, actually," Dennis said, looking at Sarah, who shrugged and handed me my phone. I felt myself frowning. "Do you remember going to bed? 'Cause I don't." "No," Sarah said softly, and Dennis shook his head in agreement. My unease deepened to something much closer to fear. "Al?" I called loudly, spinning around. "Al!" "Hey." Dennis put his hand on my shoulder. "Calm down. I'm sure he's fine. You and Sarah stay here, get the fire going, and some coffee on. I'll go look for Alan." "Alone?" Sarah asked, and I knew she felt the same fear I did. "I'll be alright." Dennis smiled at us, but I could see the worry in his eyes. "I'll stay close." He left right away, not bothering to change out his running shoes for sturdier hiking boots. He probably thought Alan was close. Sarah and I exchanged a long look, holding it until Dennis's footsteps faded from our ears. Then it started to clean up the broken glass and restart the fire. Time crawled by, and we sat quietly, our ears straining for any sounds from the surrounding trees. I noticed, but didn't mention, that the natural sounds of the forest still never returned. It remained silent, and the silence pounded against my ears. A branch snapped somewhere just behind the tree line, and Sarah and I leapt to our feet together. "Dennis?" she cried. Silence was the only answer, and she looked at me. The fear had grown inside of me, a tangible thing that felt like I had a tangerine lodged in my throat. Never had I ever felt that way. "Guys?" I called, my voice timid against the silence of the trees. "Are you there?" There was no response, but I could feel something around. Sarah's hand reached for mine, her fingers icy as they gripped my own. I felt her tremble. Something isn't right. Her voice was soft and scared. She was right. The trees seemed to be growing, closing in on us. They weren't, of course, but the pressure feeling of this presence was growing stronger. I could feel my body tingle as all the small hairs stood on end. A primal response to being threatened. I knew that somewhere, eyes were watching me, tracking me. "Should we leave?" I whispered, feeling like I needed to speak quietly, so as to not disturb or anger whatever was lurking around us. "But..." Sarah's hand was clammy in mine. "Dennis and Ellen..." "I think we should get help." I swallowed hard. noticing the light fading from the sky. Before it's dark, we should go. Shouldn't we go? I don't know if I can, Sarah whispered, and I looked over. She let herself crumple under her fear. I'm so scared. It's just a forest. I always had to be the brave one. We walked here, and we can walk back. Come on, Sarah, get up. I can't. Sarah? I could see the light fading before me, the hope of getting out of here fading with it. We have to go now. Her knees drew up, her arms curling around them. No, she murmured the word, her forehead falling to her knees as she could begin rocking right there on the forest floor. No, no, no. She was chanting the words softly, and I straightened. Damn it, the light was fading quick. Where had the sun gone? Where had the time gone? My phone, its battery almost dead, told me it was after 9, but it felt like only an hour had passed since Dennis had left us. The growing darkness brought whatever it was closer too. I could feel it lingering, laying in wait. But for what? I wasn't sure. Waiting for dark? Waiting for us to venture outside of the clearing? Sarah's chant was growing louder, crowding my mind, making it hard to think. Sarah. I snapped the word, kneeling down. Stop it. We need to do something. She just kept rocking, her chants getting louder. It didn't even sound like a word now, just a continuous yell, her rocking more erratic. It sent an urge of anger through me. I didn't need her losing it when we had to escape. I swore and straightened, deciding to ignore her breakdown and build a fire in the dying daylight. Luckily, it caught quickly, and I straightened triumphantly, feeling slightly warmed by the flames. Sarah? I turned, because she was still screaming. But when I looked to where she had last been, she was gone. Sarah? Any good feeling I had from building the fire was gone. Her scream faded, or cut out. I wasn't sure. One minute it was echoing from everywhere around me, and the next it had been sucked from the darkness, leaving it silent except for the soft cackles from the small fire. I whispered, tempted to continue Sarah's insane chant for her. Instead, after the last no ripped out of me as a scream, I stepped closer to my fire. I had to think. Screaming wouldn't get me anywhere. I had to stay rational. I felt the presence around still, stalking through the darkness around me. I had no idea of what it was, what it could be. An apex predator, a deranged human, something supernatural. Nothing would come to me. There wasn't an answer for what was happening. What do you want? I screamed into the night, but I didn't receive an answer. My own voice was swallowed in the darkness. I wanted to cry, but tears wouldn't help. My own heartbeat was becoming deafening. My breaths were shallow and disjointed, and I felt the growing need to flee. Running wouldn't help. There's no way it could help. Nothing existed beyond the small ring of light from the campfire. That much was obvious. If I stepped into the blackness, I'd be consumed. I'd be lost, extinguished, vanished like my friends. So I threw whatever was in that ring of light into my fire. Twigs, bark, dried leaves, anything to keep it going. I made a mistake. One tiny slip. Barely the tip of my pinky finger disappeared into the darkness, and I felt it. I knew what it was. I understood what was waiting in the dark for me. It wasn't as mundane as some beast, or human, or even something as simple as a spirit. It was beyond anything describable. It was fear. Whatever had began fear the first time fear was felt. It was that. It was the thing that crept up on our ancestors and taught them fear. It was what made you shudder for no reason. Look over your shoulder, fear the dark. It was there, and it was waiting for me. It would devour me the second the opportunity came, and it would grow. My last shreds of light and sanity helped me write my account, and get it to the people who will understand. I can crouch beside my fire, hold my dying phone, try to wait it out. I have no idea what is keeping it at bay. No clue why it hasn't taken me as it took my friends. I know it will. I know it won't stop until it does. Today started out as any normal day. I woke up and put my pants on one leg at a time like everyone else. I brushed my teeth haphazardly because I was lazy. I didn't care as much as I should have. Today, I walked to work. I don't know why I decided to do so, but I did. Inane protocol perhaps, like an imprinted marching order. Something just told me I should do it, so I did. The walk was fine. It's fall, so there are beautiful colors all around, and for once the heat has died down a bit. A nice wind jacket is all that I really need. I missed that jacket. While on my walk, I passed by a small coffee shop. One I had always seen while driving by, but the bustle of my busy life never permitted me to stop and smell the proverbial flowers, or in this case, coffee beans. Today was the day I decided to stop in and try it. When I walked in, a sense of deja vu had struck me across the head like a World Series pitcher had whipped a fastball right at me. It hurt like my brain just couldn't compute with what I was seeing. The coffee was fine, nothing special, bitter. I like the taste of bitter things. It helps me to realize how sweet my life can be sometimes. I often take that for granted. Things can turn bitter fast, and while the taste of bitter is nice, I only enjoy it for small periods of time. At this point, I had almost forgotten what I had to do for the day. I know brains are powered by an abhorrent small amount of electricity, but I can't help but think mine runs on even less. It's like I freeze up, locked in some thought forever, continually thinking it over and over like some kind of rabid racing dog. I took my jacket from the small chair on the shop and flung it over my shoulders, slinging it on like I did every morning, and walked out. When I arrived at work, the same people were doing the same tasks, just like every day. The office was a gray room filled with dozens of the exact same cubicles. The front desk lady gave an uneasy smile to me as I walked in, the first sign that today wasn't going to go how I thought. She was always smiling, even on the day. She told me her father had left town. She smiled away. I never thought anything of it. Oddly enough, the type of news is supposed to invoke an emotional response, right? I'm freezing on that train of thought again. When I arrived at my desk, there was an envelope. A simple, brown manila envelope. It filled me with so much immediate dread that it triggered another one of those pre-programmed responses. This time, fight or flight. I took the envelope from my desk and rushed it to the front desk lady. Damn, I don't even know her name. Does she even have a name? At the time, it didn't matter when I arrived at her desk, out of breath and slightly damp under the armpits for some undisclosed reason. She greeted me with a forced smile. "Hello, John," she said with enthusiasm. However, her eyes didn't match the tone of her voice. She looked pained and confused, and with the most uncanny smile. I felt like I didn't have time to tell her why I didn't have time to tell her. I was so overwhelmed with dread by this stupid fucking envelope that I didn't even manage to say anything. After a few moments of staring into those cold, soulless eyes, she glared at me. I finally started out a few words about how her glasses sat a quarter of an inch too much to the left. What the hell was I thinking? Am I a calculator? No, I'm just John. And just John doesn't know math well enough to calculate shit like that. I don't know what happened. I couldn't bring myself to say anything else, and neither did she. We just stared at each other for what felt like hours. I know it wasn't hours, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. I went back to my desk. The dread had been superseded by a mix of loneliness and embarrassment. When I sat down, I took a moment to compose myself. I stared at the paper envelope, and it stared right back. I don't know how it did, but it did. It gave me that same sense of impending doom as when you know you're being watched, or like when you're exploring an abandoned house and you heard the floorboards above you creak. That shiver down your spine, the cold sweat. Everything bad in this world resided within this 9x11 manila office envelope. I had finally mustered up enough courage to open this forsaken piece of office supply. When I went in to tear at a corner, I was jolted by the sight of the front desk lady in my peripheral vision. I stopped what I was doing and turned to her, her big eyes staring into mine as she did at the desk. "John, will you please follow me? I have something to show you." I was never one for friends in the office, and I sure as hell wasn't a fan of the front desk lady most days. I mean, she was nice enough, but those eyes, those unsettling eyes. They say that eyes are a window into the soul, but hers are just a window. The lights are off inside. Perhaps there are cobwebs inside too, if we want to get imaginative. I don't know. Those words, please follow me. It's like it triggered something again because no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't walk away. And by God, I did want to walk away. My feet took me into a dark room off to the side, and my hands clutched at the envelope with dear life. The front desk lady just kept staring at me. She pointed towards a small vent. We have to go through here. Have to. That phrase sent me crawling into the vent in no time. She had some sort of control over me, pressing every button she could to get me where she wanted me to go. Yet, I felt no immediate danger. Who knows, maybe she had control over that too. When I finished crawling through the vent, I found myself in a rotted out hole in the wall. A massive hole in the wall. It was basically another room. There was a disgusting old mattress and crazed scrawlings all over the walls. It was all in binary, and when I read it, I could instantly translate it all. Things here are different. Help me. God rest our souls. The front desk lady followed closely behind me, and after I had a chance to read over the walls, she gave me that uncannily huge smile. Please, open the envelope now, John. Dread flew over me, like I had just been washed ashore from a shipwreck. I tore at the corner of the envelope and opened it finally. I was expecting a nauseous gas to fume out or something to jump at me to give me a reason for all these horrible feelings. But alas, it was just a piece of loose leaf paper. I looked up and saw that she was closer to me now. I don't remember seeing her move, but she was noticeably closer, still smiling away. I pulled the paper out of the envelope. It was blank save for one line, again written in binary. You know too much. Today started as any normal day. I woke up. I put my pants on one leg at a time, like everyone else. I brushed my teeth haphazardly because I was lazy. I didn't care as much as I should have. Today I walked to work. I don't know why I decided to do so, but I did. Inane protocol perhaps, like an imprinted marching order. Something just told me I should do it, so I did. The walk was fine. It's fall, so there are beautiful colors all around, and for once the heat has died down a bit. A nice wind jacket is all that I really need. I miss that jacket. While on my walk, I passed by a small coffee shop, one I had always seen while driving by, but the bustle of my busy life never permitted me to stop and smell the proverbial flowers, or in this case, coffee beans. Today was the day I decided to stop in and try it. When I walked in, a sense of deja vu had struck me across the head like a World Series pitcher had whipped a fastball right at me. It hurt like my brain just couldn't compute with what it was seeing. What a wonderful coincidence that the front desk lady at my job was here too. I was on the couch. It was a spotless island floating among a frothing pot of chaos, safe from the ooze of decay that surrounded the house. Surrounded, perhaps, would not be an appropriate word to describe the state of the environment. The house was living garbage, pulsating like exposed meat peeled from the skin of an animal. Seated directly across from me was a man I hadn't visited in many years. My own brother. Carter and I had always been at odds. I can still recall the tender look in his eyes when I was sickly as a child, or the way he would convince our mother to let me eat just the meats at dinner and not the vegetables, which I detested with a passion. But time had caused frustration to grow like a parasite on our backs, a crushing, suffocating kind of frustration, and I found that there were several lifestyle choices which I could not agree, namely that Carter was a hoarder. The disease of the house began to fester after Carter's divorce. He'd been an art collector before, but he just began to keep random items. His obsession with art molded into something far worse. When his wife was gone, I think the items in the household that once belonged to the two of them gained new meaning. They saturated the air with her scent, and he was a fruit fly drawn to the hollow carcass of her memory. It started with the garage. Then the mess crawled its way down the throat of the house into the hallway and spilled into every room. infecting everything with a stench and longing and choking regret. "Why can't you just leave me be?" Carter whined. His voice sounded a million miles away, bouncing off of every object in the room and pounding at the back of my eyes. "I can't let you live like this. It's filthy. It's fucking vile, and someone needs to take action. Are you planning to live and die in this garbage? What about all the expensive art? It doesn't deserve to be here." "I'll live how I please," he replied, seeming small and helpless among the mounds of old boxes filled with who knows what. The stench was unbearable, so I pulled out a cigarette. Carter let out a strangled cry, shaking his head vigorously. "Don't smoke in here. It ruins the smell." He abruptly cut himself off, eyes wider than $2.50. There was enough tension in the room to light my cigarette. I frowned and put it away, immediately regretting it as the sick fragrance filled my lungs. "I'm gonna help you get rid of this mess," I told him. And so I did. But not without Carter's strange directions about where I could and couldn't go. We cleaned from 11 that morning until 3 in the afternoon, shifting the dull heaps of clothes and paper until there was a clear path through the stacks of objects that meant nothing. He was very adamant that I was not to open any of the boxes or the cabinets. I was only to move them as a whole. This seemed reasonable, as picking through individual pieces of junk did not particularly sound like a good time. But his protest became more odd as the day went on. "No going into the bathroom. Please, Steve, stay away from her room. You know how it is. I don't want you to use Febreze or anything like that in here." Inevitably, when a man has to take a piss, well, he's going to take a piss. While Carter was poking around at a few boxes, I went into the bathroom. I nearly vomited at the rancid smell I encountered there. I had expected fecal matter and urine to line the walls, but there was an eerie horror to what I saw instead. The bathroom was spotless. The only thing appeared cluttered was shrunken husks of clothing attached to the shower curtains by pins. It was women's clothing of all shapes and sizes. Silk bathrobes, narrow coats, soiled underwear. I reeled in distaste as I made my way to the toilet. All of them were caked in a layer of dirt and grime. Did his obsession with his ex-wife run this deep? I shuddered to think of what she had endured during their 2 years that they were married. Why didn't he want me in here? I did my business quickly, but Carter saw me leaving the bathroom. A spider of fear clambered up each one of my vertebrae when he locked eyes with me. "I told you not to go into the bathroom, Steve." "Oh, so I wouldn't see your damn collection? What the hell is in there?" I exploded at him. The fear turned into fury as I marched down the slim path we'd made through the trash. In my outburst of anger, I knocked over one of the boxes, and its terrifying contents spilled all over the ground. Maggots flew everywhere, writhing about, breathing in unison like the flank of a massive white beast. I flung my hand back and took a step. The maggots crunched beneath my feet, their juice seeped from beneath my sandals, and their half-bodies threatened to squirm up into my feet. But that was far from the worst of it. At the dead center of this writhing mass was a hand. Its ring finger had been removed from above the knuckle. It moved with conviction, led along by the maggots that had burrowed their way underneath its fingernails. It was more of a mass of flesh than any hand I'd ever seen, but the slender nails and fingertips could be seen clearly despite the wriggling heaps that surrounded it. I wanted to flee. I wanted to never return to that godforsaken house, but the pleading look in Carter's eyes made me freeze in place. "Explain this." I tried to sound assertive, but my voice shook more than a harmonica. I needed to call someone. I needed to call the police. I was paralyzed with fear and disgust. Only Carter's voice brought me back. "I can't," he whimpered breathless. It's my art." "Carter, get yourself together," I choked. "You have a hand in your house. A hand." I paused. Then, with endless caution, I opened the other boxes around us. One by one, the smell that had risen through the house intensified. I was numb to it all. If I could have gone back in time, I would have pinched myself, convinced myself it was a nightmare, and gone home. The boxes were full of hands, each with their ring fingers removed. My heart pounded its way up into my mouth. pressing against the back of my tongue and threatening to join the maggots on the floor. One by one, the boxes spilled open. They were unmistakably all women's hands. I vomited on the floor. When I was finished hacking up the remains of my lunch, Carter put his hand on my shoulder. "Come here. Come to her room. No one else has seen this before." He guided me, snot running down my nose, into his ex-wife's bedroom. A bloody arrangement was laid before my eyes. The missing fingers, I knew where they went. Upon every windowsill, covering every inch of the bedroom, were flower pots, and stuck into the soil, sprung up and growing from them, was a garden of fingers. Their wedding rings blinded me, rings of all sizes, on all types of hands, each rotting and clinging to the soil, decaying, filled with so many flies that there was no blacker black, covered the wall like glorious pins in shiny satin. Beneath the pulsing flies, the walls were covered with photographs. I couldn't see them clearly, but on occasion I caught a glimpse of shiny white smiles and squinted eyes looking right into the camera. Carter was later found responsible for 27 local grave robberies. I wish I could have stopped him. I wish I could have caught his obsession before it was too late. I can only imagine the distress he has caused to the families of these women. He'll spend most of his life behind bars for his grotesque actions, and I can't say he doesn't deserve it. I wish I could wake up. Every thought is haunted by the rings. Every movement is followed by some vengeful spirit beyond the grave. I feel responsible for what he has done, and an immense guilt hangs over me. I can only hope that writing this out will release some of my shame. I'm never returning to that damn cave ever again. After what I saw and felt, nothing could convince me to go back. I know I sound crazy, but don't enter Debarrimise Cave. Just take a nice picture of it from a distance. Don't go in there at all. Everyone always says I am crazy, but they don't go in entering that hellhole either. I decided to tell this to those who still live there. I had to go back to my old house and dig up old boxes just to find my old crusty ass diary I had in 7th grade. To remember certain details when I was there. Jesus Christ, this thing is dusty. Day 1. The former cave. Debarrimise was a cave in my former county. I used to live in years ago when I was in middle school. Now my county was poor and full of crime. It has one of the worst schools in the state. Nobody really wants to live there. I grew up tough and depressed. I didn't trust anyone because living there wasn't living at all. Despite this, there was only one thing that made me happy in the county: a cave. Now I was just ranting about not going in there, but that's exactly why. This cave is weird and comforting. Not sure how to explain it without sounding like a hypocrite. This place really wants to bring you in further. I was going through a typical edgy phase during my teen years, and at home things weren't better, which is why one day, I was strolling along the beach. I discovered the cave. I live in the upper northeast where the ocean is there, and fishing is a great job. Anyways, I would stroll before high tide kicked in the morning, because high tide would usually be the worst time to go to the beach, as all the rocks, shells, and sharp objects in the ocean would wash up and stab you as you walked. I discovered the cave when I strolled a bit further than I usually did. I strolled at least 2 miles on the beach, then walked back to my house. But I decided to go just a bit farther, 4 miles this time. The cave was there. The early sun shining on it in its beautiful crystal glaze was a great reason for someone to wonder about the cave. As I drew a bit closer, admiring the cave's beauty, I felt something comforting. In those days, I never felt it before. I just had to go in. Something just seemed so right about this cave. Now, I would usually only walk in early mornings. Sometimes I'd walk at night, if I felt like it. I didn't usually bring a flashlight with me, but this cave was a lot darker than I expected. The entrance, of course, was bright, but everywhere else, complete pitch black. I had a very useless and cheap keychain flashlight my uncle gave me, but it didn't really work that well, but I could see a tiny bit. Nothing interesting really was in there after the beautiful shining crystals at the entrance. Just stones and some interesting marks on the wall. They kind of looked like scratch marks, but I didn't have much suspicion in those marks, as no real interesting creatures roamed our lands. and this looked too much like a tourist attraction rather than a bear's home. The cave seemed to make me go in farther, but I noticed high tide would come soon because of the somewhat visible moon in the sky, and also because of some ocean bells our county installed to alert folks on the beach. So I left, but I wanted to stay. But I couldn't, because I would be trapped. I resisted the urge to explore farther. I returned home to my crappy house. Day 2. Exploration. The next day I decided to go farther into the cave. Now before I entered I saw a man near it. He was facing my direction. We both stared at each other. Now he clearly didn't look like a fisherman heading to my direction. He didn't even look like he was fishing at all. He looked casual but fancy. His posture was good, but he seemed out of place. He didn't seem to belong in our terrible county. He looked too good for that. His expression at me wasn't a friendly gesture saying hello at all. It wasn't welcoming. Now in my area not many people liked each other, hence the immense amount of crime, but people still greeted each other at a distance. But this man, he looked like he would treat me nice from a distance, but instead, he gave an expression on his face that I hadn't seen before. It was like he didn't want me to go near him, or maybe even the cave. The man didn't seem to be entering the cave like it was pulling him in. He was lounging right to the side of the entrance. I could make out him making a squint at me. I gave a squint, but didn't treat him dirty with a finger. I strolled over to the cave trying to ignore him, but he said something kind of weird to me. "You shouldn't endeavor in that cave, sport." I didn't trust anyone, of course, so I simply just said to him, "Alright, buddy." I was 13 at the time, so calling me sport was weird. You know, everyone in our county constantly harassed each other, calling each other either slurs or simply just terrible nicknames. Him calling me sport made me suspicious. Felt out of place, but I continued beyond into the cave, prepared with a flashlight. I still was aware of the high tide, but reports by our local weather said we might not have high tide today. Lucky for me, I guess. I just have to worry about how long I am in there. The flashlight I brought was the best I had. It could last me a couple hours, but I only planned exploring deep enough into the cave that I could make it home safely before dusk. The flashlight I used barely covered any distance with light, but it could make out something more than 10 feet in front of me. I noticed after shining the flashlight on the wall had scratches that seemed to stop at a certain point. It then ended but started with what I thought to be red paint. Well, you may immediately think it's blood. You're right. I thought it was those markings cavemen make on the walls in caves. I was 13, very stupid, going through puberty and depressed. I didn't know that cavemen were mostly in Africa, but I never paid attention in school. Nobody in my county really had the need to go to school, since either way, you would probably just get your ass beat there. But I looked a little closer. The marks of red got a bit bigger. It was spread across the floor, and it looked like a human head was marked onto it. Across the floor, into the wall of the right. The scratch marks seemed to be a lot more aggressive. Then I noticed on the floor as well that a huge mark in the dirt, and stone that looked like if you took a massive rock and dropped it there. The hole was about the size of a normal big rock you'd see in a canyon of some sort. It looked to be etched into the ground. Then I saw little pieces of something in that etched stone and dirt. I couldn't make it out. I didn't really feel to inspect them, but something caught my eye. The wall on the right, a bit higher up, was stained with red. Not like something dumped a huge thing of red paint on that sucker, but more like staining a somewhat big red spot on your shirt after eating sauce, let's say. Then the ground below that had the stained red covering the floor in a path. It seemed to go out farther into the cave. I took the stain and wiped my finger against it. Now if the stain of red didn't make a red mark on my finger that looked moist and fresh, I probably wouldn't have to be freaked out. But it did. It was blood. All the red stains and marks on the wall were blood of something. Something about this cave was not right. The feeling I had while exploring this was now gone. Now it felt like something was watching, and it felt aggressive. Now I should have left right there, but I was interested and a little bit nervous at the same time. I went just a bit farther, and then I saw something. It was round, and it looked like it was something poking out of the stone and dirt. I felt that now was a good time to leave, but I would inspect this object first. I got a bit closer and then I realized what it was. A decaying head. A fucking decaying head was laying there. The face of the head was in shock, in great pain. It was telling me something, showing me something I didn't know. I covered my mouth because I realized how loud I was being. It was awfully quiet in there. I knew that was the time to leave. Adrenaline told me I was going the right way. I found the way out. I bolted out of the cave as fast as I could. It took me a while to notice that it was beginning to be nighttime. Wait a minute. I was in that cave early morning. There's no way. I stopped thinking about it. I looked back to check for the man if he was there. It wasn't. I didn't care about the man or cave anymore. This was the only time I wanted to go home. Now my parents, well, I did grow up in a bad place. My parents don't really care about me. They worry for themselves more than me, but I didn't care. Home was the only place I wanted to be now, even if it was one of the worst to be. My parents were cautious about robbers and home invaders, so the door was locked. I knew a way in through a window, but making no noise in this house, with the creaking floors, is real hard. I didn't want to wake up my parents to alert them, and possibly just have them kill their own child. My parents would probably not hesitate. They would mistake me for a criminal before it was too late. Muggings in the neighborhood taught me to be silent and mind your own personal business. So I was silent, of course. The creaking of the floor was loud, but didn't seem to be loud enough to wake my parents up. I quietly headed to my bedroom to await daytime, and I know that tomorrow, I would probably be stupid and go back and find something interesting. I was scared, but that didn't stop me from entering farther. I had to know what was in there. It was stupid, but something is in there that nobody else seems to care about and slip under the rug. Whatever that thing is, it's deadly, and I better arm myself. Day 3, Forbidden Cave. Now that I saw that decaying head, the huge marks of blood, and that I was in there longer than I thought, I had to change up my rules for going in there. I had to check my time at least every few minutes in order to keep track, because I thought time was different in that cave compared to the outside. I also had to bring some extra batteries for that crappy flashlight I had. Batteries were hard to get. I had to resort to stealing some from school, home, and use some of my own personal money to make sure I could last. I also had a rule that if I saw something I most likely couldn't face against in there, I would bolt ass and only look back if needed. Clearly the thing that is in the cave is no animal. This thing can manage to slam a human against walls and the ground with such force to etch a little hole in the ground. I went to head out with my gear. Right as I was about to head out, my mom stopped me. "What are you doing?" I responded with, heading to a friend's house. My mom stared at me with a look that she wasn't buying it, but she had other problems at the moment, so she just sighed and said, "Alright." That was close. I opened the door and headed to the beach. 4 miles later, and there it was again. This time when I got close, I didn't feel happiness. I felt something much worse and creepy. I felt danger and death. This cave is clearly not a cave if it can make me feel death. Danger maybe. But death, there is no way. I decided to see if the man was nearby. I looked all around. I did see a man fishing, but it wasn't the same man. He looked like the average Joe you'd see in my neighborhood. His shirt had stains and gross marks on it. He was normal. That man wasn't. If he told me to not go in there, and now he is gone, something happened. I must have caused him to disappear by simply walking in there. With all my rules and mindsets in play, there was no turning back. I would go in, find out something. If I found something, I shouldn't. I would do everything I could to stop remembering it. I need to know why he told me I shouldn't go in there. I need to find the source of that happiness. And the first time I went in, I walked in and went further and further in, checking time every few minutes. Some of my thoughts and theories were confirmed by walking in farther. Time was a bit weird in this cave. The head was not new. Obviously the poor person was killed a long time ago, so the blood must be from someone else. I went farther and farther. Eventually there was a drop. Not so big I could die by jumping, but you would need to land on your knees right to not accidentally break your knees. I jumped down. Now I wasn't worried too much about getting back up. There were rocks I could pull myself up with. The problem was that the feeling of dread going in was gone. Something new emerged. Fear and something bad getting closer to me. I was still cautious. I checked my time, still on track. I won't be running out into the night like I did yesterday. I will get out if I need to. The feeling of fear and that feeling of something bad getting close, they were getting stronger. I was getting nervous now. I noticed a corner and turned once I could see what was in the corner. My heart was beating fast. I shined my flashlight. It was the man. He looked off. He was facing the opposite direction and had his hands in his pockets. Something was wrong. I saw him take his hands out of his pockets, but then he slumped his hands. He turned. He looked normal, same as he had when I first saw him. His eyes, however, turned red. Now light can change the color of your eyes, of course, at certain points. Say taking a photo with a flash on, or using a flashlight and shining it at a person. So I thought it was that, but they got brighter and more noticeable, let's say. He then muttered the words that still haunt me right now as an adult. Safe from that county and cave. You aren't supposed to be here. He said those words in a tone that said, "You screwed up. You have made a terrible decision. You're gonna suffer your consequences." The room we stood in got bright red. I could now see everything in the room somewhat clearly. There was mangled and mutilated bodies hanging up on the ceiling, hung up by ropes and chains. The faces of the already dead ones still filled with horror. I could still see where they hurt the most. There was some that looked new. Some were alive, but barely. They could barely move their eyes. They slowly turned towards me. They had horror, but said something that seemed not what they would say. You aren't supposed to be here. The dead and mutilated corpses turned. They didn't make any sound, but they turned towards me. At once, both the dead and alive people fell from their torture spots. Every alive individual died instantly, and they all rotted in an instant. They became lifeless green and gross bodies. They all stood up and began to say, "You can't hide. You aren't supposed to be here." Then the man started chasing me. Now I thought I could face against him, but something clicked in my head that either way, I probably wouldn't last long standing there and staying. So I ran as fast as I could. I didn't want to get tired. I don't care if I had a heart attack afterwards. This was a threat that wasn't human or natural. I looked behind me once before running even faster. I saw all the corpses crawling at fast speeds. The man wasn't in a running state like me. I would blink, and he would teleport forward, his eyes glowing red still. I saw behind me that the cave was filling with blood, and I was both being chased by whatever the hell that man was, and the corpses, and the tsunami of blood and death coming towards me. I checked my time. It was now 1 hour ahead, despite me checking it only 1 minute earlier. Then it went up 1 hour each time I got closer to the entrance and escaped. The clock on my watch said 3 a.m. Then the sounds of the corpses and dead people started screaming. The sounds weren't pain. They were screams of terror and death. The man stopped dead in his tracks. He just stood there. The blood tsunami behind him swallowed him. I stopped looking behind me, ran even faster, and didn't stop. Don't be a horror movie character. You'll get your ass dead before you can take another step. Don't look back. Don't stop running until you're home. I checked my clock. It was now 6 a.m. Time is going even faster. I probably won't even get to the entrance of the cave before dying by time going faster than I want it to. If time was getting faster, it means I was getting closer. I could see light. It wasn't from a flashlight. It was natural, but I could barely see it. That was the cave entrance. I could see the markings with my flashlight. I dropped all the batteries and everything else I probably didn't need to increase my speed. I climbed the wall faster than any climber on a rock wall has done. Those corpses were close. The blood tsunami was filling fast. I couldn't outrun the tsunami, so I had to get out quick and get to a high elevation, and I might be able to avoid it. Then after I climbed the wall, I broke my own rule and checked back again. They were still chasing me and climbing the wall and screaming with terror. As the entrance was right there, I screamed, "Burn in hell!" I shouted because I could finally scream all the terrors inside of me. I had a match and lighter. My father was a heavy smoker, so I took his lighter. I found the match on the ground, and it looked good enough. I had some gas in a small cup I brought with me. I had brought my backpack with me and placed it in there. I kept my hands on it while running to not spill it. As the entrance was right there, I poured out all of the gasoline and lit the match. I dropped it onto the gas and flames ignited. I wasn't sure if the corpses were invincible, but I wasn't stopping to find out. I ran out and it seemed to be about 7 a.m. Luckily, just right before high tide, that hellhole burned and burned for a while. Since there was a mix of dirt and fire, it wouldn't last long, but it would allow me to get back to my house. I still heard the screams, but they got quieter. They either retreated or burned a fiery death. I wasn't gonna find out right now. Check later. Check at a good time. Don't go in the cave. Look from a distance and find out, if anything. Right as I got out to the boardwalk, high tide started. The area was closed and I got out only by 1 minute. There was some people there. As I got on the boardwalk, I fell on the ground and passed out. I didn't care. I ran like hell and survived. I did everything a horror character didn't. I played it smart and ran my ass to the finish line. I was willing to have a heart attack after to survive those creatures. If it weren't for adrenaline, I would have passed out. Probably died a long time ago. Day 4. Run like hell. I woke up in a hospital not long after passing out. My family was there, staring at my lifeless body. I felt bad for them knowing going to the hospital just bankrupt them. They saw I was alive and awake. My mom asked again, but with worry and care. What were you doing? Running. I was running, Mom. I barely had the strength to speak. I was so out of breath and could barely breathe. The doctor walked over and noticed I was not breathing well. He stuck a breathing mask on my face, and it helped for the moment. Any good news? My father asked. Well, both good and bad, but I can happily say he will be alright, the doctor commented. So what's the bad news? My father asked. Well, your son had a heart attack. He almost died. We saved him just right before he was going to die. He turned towards me and crouched down. You survived well, sport, the doctor said. Hearing him say the word sport didn't feel right. It felt like the doctor was the man. I didn't want to talk to him. I went into a nervous sweat because of all the trauma I went through. I started breathing heavily and more. Everyone calmed me down. I asked, which hospital is this? Barely getting my words out. Newport Hospital. This was a good hospital. Not the best, but certainly out of the reaches of our terrible county. I looked at my parents, then looked at the doctor. I thanked him for saving me. He nodded and left. Problem with having a heart attack being poor is that it's expensive as hell. My parents love me in some sense, but they probably wouldn't be able to afford anything for a real long time, so I was probably gonna starve after getting back home. 2.5 months later. It's been a crappy road to get back out there. I was released from the hospital and my parents decided to take me out of school for the entire year. Hooray, I guess, but now I feel like shit all the time. I can still barely breathe because of running faster than I should have. Maybe it was the smoke. I ran faster than my body could handle, until I got to the boardwalk, then it all went to bloody hell for my body. I had an almost severe heart attack. My lungs were a mess, and yeah, but some good things have happened. My parents got promotions at their jobs, so we can afford some food. But it's not like food appearing all the time. The cost of the hospital bills are still a problem to them. I'm gonna go check the cave out again, but from a distance. I probably won't be going to the beach anymore. Screw that. I'm afraid to go anywhere near the cave. I wanted to see if I was successful in ending all the poor people's sufferings. Well, it was hard to tell. But I think I did. I'm not gonna get close enough to tell. That thing is hell awaiting for you to enter. I told my parents and some other people. My parents don't believe me that much, but will still treat my story with caution for themselves. Everyone else laughed at my face, calling me insane. Well, fine then. Go die in that cave if you want. You will have wanted to listen to me anyways. Life has gotten better ever since I went into that cave and survived. My parents decided we should finally move after years of poor conditions and horrible crime that we moved a bit further inland, where the ocean and crime wouldn't affect me and my family. I slowly recovered. I'm now an adult living by myself. I just graduated college and found myself a good job. Not exactly my dream job, but I enjoy it, and it helps pay the bills. Everyone else I knew who stayed at the county, well, unfortunately, some of them didn't last long there. Some gang went around committing robbery, theft, sometimes even murder. I sometimes wonder, though, how I even got out. Don't have any guilt of any kind, but I wonder about it. How close were they to getting to me before I got out? If I went in not following those rules, would I have died? I still have bad anxiety though, mainly from the trauma of the cave. Seeing those bodies and people hung up, either still alive or horribly disfigured, is something still in my nightmares. I still try and ignore it. It was 22 years ago that it happened. I need to forget, but sometimes I hear his voice. Not sure if it's from my mind or if he's outside of my window. You aren't supposed to be here.